You know, my first thought when I saw this today was, in light of everything else that he said over the last couple of months, do you think this is actually going to happen? Is he just sending a message to Apple? Is he just mad at Tim Cook because they had some kind of meeting on Wednesday? Like, how do you think this plays out?
You never quite know with Donald Trump. And,
Yeah.
I've been around him for 8 or 9 years. And sometimes, people think he's doing things that are crazy, but oftentimes he's crazy as a fact. So we'll see. I think he's frustrated that so many of these phones are made outside the United States. But you're also right that one of the risks of putting a huge tariff on these imported iPhones is that you're going to have to pay a lot more for them. Now, I think 3,000 is a little bit of an exaggeration, but they could easily go up by 20 or 30% in price. And you're talking about right now, some of these phones sell for $800 or $1,000. So that would be a significant increase. I think that Tim Cook is going to probably put in a position of bringing some of this production back home, but there aren't that many cell phones that are made in the United States. They're made in Korea, they're made in India, they're made in China, and that's because they're much cheaper to be made there. So we'll see how this turns out, but this is Trump expressing some anger. I think he had a deal with Tim Cook, and I think he feels like Tim Cook isn't holding up his end of the bargain.
Couldn't Tim Cook just be thinking it's cheaper to pay the 25% tariff than to change all the manufacturing to the United States, pay the wages in the United States, and it actually would be cheaper. I mean, if the phone is $1,000 now, and it's $1,300 when they make it in India, but it would go up to $3,500. There's the numbers in the United States. I mean, could he just be thinking, okay, let's just pay the 25%?
Yeah, quite possibly. You're right, because our production costs are a lot higher in terms of manufacturing. That's why they're made in China and India in the first place, is labor costs are a lot cheaper there. And that does benefit our consumers. Listen, Apple is a $1 to $2 trillion company. It's an incredible American company. There are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States that are a result of Apple, all the research and development and the technology and the sales force to sell these things. So Apple is a major job producer here in the U.S., notwithstanding that a lot of the factories are there in China.
If Tim Cook decides, let's just keep it the way it is, pay the 25%, does that also end up making President Trump happy? Because he always talks about this tariff money and how incredible it would be.
Well, tariffs are taxes, no question about it, Brian, and they do raise money, and that could be used just potentially to offset some of the costs of these other tax cuts that we're debating in Congress right now as we speak. So certainly that could be a pay for some of the other tax reductions that Trump wants. His general framework, and I helped him on the tax policy, was let's lower taxes on things that are made in the United States, and Michigan and Maine and in Ohio, and then increase the tax on things that are coming in from other countries. And I think most Americans think, that's not such a bad idea. Let's give American workers a little bit of a lift here. So that's, I think, his overall strategy. But we're always going to have global trade. I mean, the global trade is what makes the world go round. And we've been big beneficiaries of global trade because we have these companies like Google and Apple and Amazon that have really made so much money for Americans by being a global business.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think any American's going to be happy if they have to spend $3,500 on an iPhone. Oh my gosh, everyone will be mad at President Trump then.
I got my iPhone here. I don't want to pay 30% more for it.
Oh my gosh.
Look, we'll see. Look, some of the cost of the tariff, if it is ever applied, will be borne by the shareholders of Apple, and some of the costs will be borne by the Chinese workers who may not have jobs, and some of it will be borne by the consumers who buy iPhones. I mean, and we just don't know exactly what those proportions are. But I don't think you're going to see a doubling of cell phone costs.
Yeah.
I think that's a little of exaggeration.
And President Trump made a good point today that, these companies make so much money. Like, can't they just make a little less and move their stuff back to America and help the people out? So,
look, I'm an investor in Apple, and most people have their 401 plans, a lot of Apple and Google and all these tech stocks. So, I like the fact that we have these incredibly productive and profitable companies. And so, look, the more profitable they are, the better our retirement funds are going to be.
Yeah. Stephen Moore, appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you so much. Have a good holiday weekend.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.